During their summer vacation, a group of young people travel through the most famous countries in the world, and after visiting various tourist attractions, they set off for Ukraine, heading for the city of Kiev. When they get there, they meet their friend Paul, who offers his apartment so that the young people can rest before continuing their tours. After stowing their luggage, Chris reveals to his brother that he intends to propose to his girlfriend Natalie as soon as they finish their trip to Moscow. When he hears the news, Paul is extremely happy and says that he is very proud of his friend. During the conversation, the young man asks if Amanda, Natalie's friend, has a boyfriend, but Chris orders him not to talk about it at any time, as the girl has just come out of a relationship. The next day, the group meets in a cafe in the city, and Paul tells them that before they leave for Moscow, they should do some extreme tourism. The young man suggests that the group go to the city of Pripyat, where they will meet his friend Yuri, who is a tour guide and can help them on a trip to Chernobyl, so that they can see the abandoned nuclear power plants. Despite Chris's disapproval, Paul insists on the idea, and tells him that thanks to the nuclear accidents there, everyone left their homes in less than 24 hours, turning the place into a ghost town. Excited to see the mysterious place, the girls agree with the young man, so Chris has no choice but to accompany the group. When they arrive at Yuri's store, the man reveals that he is a former Special Forces soldier who has made hundreds of trips to the city of Chernobyl. Just then, two adventurers called Michael and Zoe appear on the scene and tell them that they are also part of the group that will be traveling to the radioactive city. With that, the adventurers piled into the van and set off in the direction of Chernobyl. While driving, Yuri tells them how the accidents happened and explains that thanks to a sudden destabilization, reactor number 4 caused a huge explosion, which vaporized a large part of the plant. After passing through the city of Pripyat, the group is intercepted at one of the military borders, and Yuri asks the young people to remain silent while he tries to talk to the soldiers. On returning to the vehicle, the man reveals that the site is under maintenance, which is why they are not allowed in. Despite this, Paul orders Yuri to find a way to take them to the city, as the veteran has promised to take care of everything so that the group can get to know Chernobyl. So the man decides to take them through the entrance to the forest, and tells them that the tourists will have the city of Pripyat reserved just for them. In the middle of the dense forest, they stop in front of a small lake, and Yuri asks the group to get out of the vehicle so that he can show them something bizarre. Using his knife, the man clears some leaves from the ground, and the young people come across the carcass of a bizarre fish on the riverbank. As they were about to approach the animal, it ended up moving, which frightened all the tourists, who decided to return to the van. Sometime later, the group finally arrives in the city of Chernobyl, and after using his Geiger counter to ensure that the radiation levels are under control, Yuri says they are safe, and guides the young people around the site. By the end of the expedition, the adventurers have explored several places that have been abandoned, and the veteran tells them that he has one more place he wants to show them. At this point, Yuri leads the group to one of the destroyed buildings, and after passing the remains of an animal that was eliminated by radiation, they enter the building. While the rest of the young people were enjoying the scene, Michael picked up one of the objects in the apartment and was alerted by Yuri, who ordered him to put it down immediately. The veteran explains that a few years ago, several criminals came to Chernobyl to loot the buildings, with the aim of selling their belongings on the illegal market. However, the young people are forced to run once again, in exposure to items that were totally contaminated by radiation. The man then goes out onto the balcony and shows them the reactor that caused the nuclear disaster, saying that it is only possible to enter the place wearing an anti-radiation suit. Impressed, the young people exposure to items that were totally balcony, and while waiting for their customers, Yuri goes into one of the rooms, and as he looks at the floor, he realizes that the radiation levels are getting more and more aggressive. So he asks everyone to accompany him to the exit, because it's time for them to leave, but at that moment, they hear noises coming from the corridors, and decide to find out what's going on. When they arrive at the source of the noise, Yuri separates from the group to check the stairs, and after a few seconds, a giant bear appears, and because it's scared, it runs out of the building, almost running over Paul and Amanda. Realizing that the situation is starting to get dangerous, the veteran orders everyone to get out of there, and together the adventurers return to the van. At this point, the group realizes that the vehicle isn't starting, and upon inspecting the engine, Yuri notices that the wires have been completely destroyed. As soon as they realize that they are trapped, the young people begin to despair, and in order to rescue them from there, the tour guide uses his military radio so that he can communicate with the border guards, but he receives no response from the soldiers. A few hours pass, and even after dark, the group is still trapped in the radioactive city. While they were discussing how they could leave Chernobyl, the tourists began to hear a number of screams and concluded that more people might be wandering around the city. But the veteran says this is impossible, as the main entrance is blocked by the military. Worried about what might be approaching the adventurers, Yuri takes out his gun and asks the young people to remain silent in the vehicle. Believing that the man would be in danger if he wandered off alone, Chris left the van and began to accompany him. Suddenly, the group hears gunfire in the forest, and so that he can protect his brother, Paul rushes towards the pair. After a few seconds, the young man returns to the van next to Chris, who has serious injuries to his leg. As soon as they close the door, Chris reveals that Yuri has been eliminated, at which point the vehicle is surrounded by several dogs who furiously try to attack the youngsters. Using a metal tool, Michael scares the hooded animals away from the scene, and then the survivors try to stabilize the wounds of the young man, who is losing large amounts of blood. Due to the length of time the lights have been on, the van's battery begins to fail, leaving the group in complete darkness. While they try to illuminate the interior of the vehicle, Natalie and Paul tourniquet Chris, who has a compound fracture in his leg. At the same time, something hits the side of the van, and so as not to be noticed, the young people turn off their flashlights and remain silent. The next day, Chris is getting weaker and weaker, and realizing that they won't be rescued if they stay there, the survivors decide to take the spare radio to go out in search of Yuri while Natalie looks after her boyfriend in the vehicle. During the search, they try again to contact the man with the walkie-talkie, but when they do, Paul hears his voice coming back from a few meters away. As they approach, the trio find Yuri's radio lying on the ground and decide to enter the building, as they know he may be alive. So they follow the trail of blood left by the missing man, and Amanda says that they should return to the van and leave. However, Michael tells them that even if Yuri is no longer alive, they can still find his firearm, which will bring much more security to the group. After a few minutes of searching, the trio finally find the veteran, but it's too late as he has been brutally torn apart, leaving only the carcass of his body. Suddenly, they see a silhouette approaching the door and decide to look for Yuri's gun, but only find the ammunition magazine in his Geiger counter. Realizing that the threat is getting closer, the men run off, abandoning Amanda, who hides behind one of the tables. With that, a humanoid presence invades the place, and realizing that she won't have much time before it is found, the woman decides to sneak to the exit, while the monster is distracted by Yuri's body. At that moment, Amanda finds the man's gun lying on the ground, and after picking it up, she runs towards the exit, being chased by the creature. As soon as the woman escapes, Michael holds the door, allowing Paul to shoot through it several times, scaring off the intruder. Soon afterwards, the trio ran through the building, and after breaking one of the glass screens, they fled the scene. When they reach the vehicle, Paul says they should leave immediately, but Chris can no longer walk, so he asks his brother to go and find help, as he is the only one who can speak the country's language. Paul says that although the journey will take a few hours, they will try to get back before nightfall, and leaves his gun with Chris so that they can protect themselves in case anything happens. During the discussion, Amanda looks at the photos she has taken with her camera, when she suddenly realizes that a creature has been wandering around the buildings during the day. But so as not to frighten the group even more, she decides to remain silent. So Natalie stays in the van next to her lover, while the rest of the group heads for the border. Halfway through the journey, they come across a pack of wild dogs and decide to take the road through the forest. After a few minutes on the road, Paul hears his Geiger counter beeping, which means that the radiation is increasing more and more. Soon after, Amanda spots an abandoned junkyard, and the group starts looking for working parts so they can fix the van. During their investigation, the survivors come across a bus riddled with bullet holes, and when they enter the vehicle, they find hundreds of rounds of ammunition scattered on the floor, indicating that there must be a gun hidden inside. Even after finding a firearm, Paul realizes that the rifle is no longer working, so they leave the bus. Outside, Michael and Zoe come across a van identical to Yuri's, and after rummaging through the parts, they find the same component that was destroyed in the military vehicle, and decide to go back to Chris and Natalie. While using the radio to inform the rest of the group that they were about to leave, the survivors see the rabid dogs approaching and flee in desperation. During their escape, they are forced to cross a small radioactive lake, but thanks to her desperation, Zoe ends up overbalancing and falls into the water. Trying to save his beloved, Michael throws himself into the river and manages to help the woman back to the bridge. However, the young man feels something attacking his body and is unable to swim to dry land. Quickly, the trio joins forces to pull Michael to the ground, and when they notice that the man has deep scratches on his leg, they help him up so that they can continue their journey and escape as soon as possible. On the journey back, night falls once again, and along the way, Paul reveals that various urban legends circulate in the area around Chernobyl, where people say that the city has never been empty, as it has been inhabited by radioactive creatures since the accident happened. Disgusted that his friend hadn't said anything about it before, Michael scolds him, starting an argument in the middle of the road, which allows a creature to walk around the group without them even noticing. Soon after, Amanda says that they can't waste any more time on disagreements, because Chris and Natalie could be in danger. When they arrive at the scene, they realize that the van has disappeared and decide to follow the tracks left by the tires. A few meters away, they find the car completely wrecked, and as they search through the remains left after the accident, Zoe finds the couple's cell phone, which recorded a video shortly before they were attacked. In the recording, Chris reveals to his lover that he was about to propose to her, but Natalie interrupts him, saying that she is sure they will get out of there alive, and will finish their vacation just as they had planned. Suddenly, the couple are attacked by an extremely powerful creature, which manages to overturn the vehicle and capture both of them, and only Chris and Natalie's screams can be heard as they are brutally eliminated. Terrified at having witnessed the perishment of his own brother, Paul goes completely mad and starts screaming in despair. Thanks to all the noise caused by the young man, several screams echo around the place, and the group decides to follow the trails of blood so that they can try to rescue Chris. After entering one of the buildings, the survivors walk around the area in search of the young man, but without success, and trying to prevent more members from being eliminated by the monsters, they decide to leave the building. At that moment, the young people hear grunts coming from the darkness, and when they shine their lights in the direction of the noise, they come across a bizarre creature, and flee in terror. Just as they are about to leave, the group comes across Natalie, who is wandering the corridors in shock, and after rescuing her, they leave the building. At the same time, Michael manages to get hold of a map of the area and tries to analyze the escape routes while Paul and Amanda try to calm Natalie down. Observing the roads, the man notices that there is another border in that town, which means that they can try to get there to finally escape from Chernobyl. Feeling devastated at having lost his younger brother, Paul orders the group to return to the buildings and help him bring Chris back. Trying to calm him down, Amanda prevents the young man from returning to the building, and tells him that as soon as they can contact the authorities, they will bring enough help to rescue his brother. Despite being extremely worried, Paul agrees to the idea, and together the survivors set off towards the border. Halfway there, Natalie loses her strength and sits down on the ground so she can rest, but at that moment, the group comes across a little girl watching them, and they decide to approach her. What they don't know is that the little girl is just a distraction, and as soon as they are far enough away, another creature captures Natalie, who is quickly dragged away. Even after running at full speed after their friend, the survivors can't spot her. So they enter one of the buildings in search of Natalie, but the only thing they find are the remains of one of the military men in the area. On leaving the site, the group comes across a horde of radioactive zombies, and they run off in desperation, starting a chase. Quickly, the quartet flees through the city, and after entering one of the buildings, they try to use the furniture to block the door. Even so, the horde of monsters doesn't give up, and they find another route so that they can continue chasing the survivors. Shortly afterwards, they come across an underground refuge, and when they try to close the door, Michael ends up being grabbed by the creatures and eliminated instantly. When she witnesses the perishment of her lover, Zoe is extremely shaken, but Amanda calms her down and helps her friend to keep running. After walking around for a few minutes, they arrive at an abandoned laboratory, and despite feeling increasingly affected by the radiation, the group stands firm and continues through the site. While trying to find a way out of there, the survivors find a pantry full of personal belongings, and conclude that those items must belong to the guinea pigs who lived inside the lab. Just then, Paul comes across Chris's engagement ring and calls out to his brother. However, this only makes the situation worse, as the young man's voice causes more creatures to appear in the refuge, and the young people are forced to run once again. In order to reach the exit, they use one of the staircases that lead to the upper floor, but at that moment, Zoe has her leg grabbed by the creatures. No matter how hard they tried to hold their companion, she ended up being pulled under, becoming yet another victim of the radioactive zombies. Stunned by the chain eliminations they are witnessing, Paul and Amanda become increasingly terrified and can do nothing but flee the place. Halfway there, the pair arrive at a control room, where the young man bursts into tears, claiming that he is to blame for the elimination of all the members of the group. Upon hearing this, Amanda goes to her friend and tries to comfort him, saying that from now on, what they must prioritize above all else is that they escape the city alive, otherwise everyone's sacrifice will have been in vain. As they make their way through the corridors, the survivors feel their eyes and skin burning violently, and on checking the meter, Paul discovers that the radiation levels are extremely high, so they need to get out of Chernobyl as quickly as possible. Outside, they see Natalie's body lying on the ground, and approach to check if the woman is still alive, but it's too late, as she has already been finished off by the hooded monsters. Despite no longer being able to stand all the chaos, the pair continue their escape, but as soon as they see the exit, they notice that several creatures are circling the place, preventing them from escaping. Suddenly, they are attacked from behind and knocked down by the monsters, but Amanda manages to grab an iron bar and use it as a weapon, knocking out the enemies. With the threat neutralized, the survivors run towards the exit of the city, and Paul reveals that thanks to the radiation burns on his eyes, he can no longer see. Suddenly, the pair are found by a military squad, and on noticing the high exposure marks on their faces, the soldiers point their guns in the direction of the couple. Despite this, Paul can't understand what's happening, and he gets closer and closer to the combatants, begging them to leave as soon as possible. For not obeying the soldiers' orders, the young man ends up being shot by the squad, and when she witnesses the cruel elimination of the last member of her group, Amanda is heartbroken and lies down next to Paul's body. Soon afterwards, the woman is captured by the military, and in order to mitigate the radiation damage, they put the young woman in an ambulance, which takes her to hospital in a few minutes. Throughout the journey, Amanda begs for her injuries to be treated, as she can feel nothing but severe pain in her skin, which is extremely affected by the burns. As they take the woman to one of the hospital rooms, the doctor reveals that what they did was extremely dangerous, since they spent several hours next to reactor number 4, as well as not wearing any protective clothing. The problem is that it was all a lie, and after being taken down a macabre corridor, the survivor is abandoned by the doctors and locked in one of the rooms, which is completely dark. As soon as she looks around, Amanda realizes that she is not alone in that place, and in a few seconds, dozens of radioactive zombies appear, so that from now on, the young woman is just another of the thousands of guinea pigs in the Chernobyl experiments. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.